massive round of applause to Dr. Emily Clements.
Hello. How are we all?
Excellent.
Good.
How are you?
Oh, really good. Thank you. Am I in the right zone? Yeah? I know I'm not allowed to wander too much over there, so if you see me, tell me off. I'm here to talk to you today about how your brain is your biggest competitive advantage, and in particular, one way that you can use it. But first, I want to set the scene by talking about what happens when we're not using this particular skill. I want you to imagine a day at work. And not just any day, but a really busy day. You might call it a stressful day, where there's emails and messages coming in at you from all directions. There's problems, you feel like you kind of can't slow down and can't catch a break. You might miss your lunch break, before you know it, time's flown and it's the end of the day. There's a lot of thoughts whirring round in your head, but you can't really seem to land on one or focus on one particular idea. How many people have had a day like this? Yeah. How many people have more than one day like this? Yeah. Me too. It's pretty common, and I'd say that it's the norm in a lot of the way that we work. We work in this very reactive state. I heard someone earlier talk about kind of you're so busy working like in the business that you're not working on it. It's kind of that same concept. Now, the opposite of this, and the thing that I'm going to talk to you about, is when you can stop and slow down and zoom out from the problem. When you give yourself that mental headspace to start to really explore, what am I doing here? Where am I going with this in the future? And what is my unique perspective that I can offer? So I'm here to tell you, if the clicker will work, that imagination is your competitive advantage. Now, bear with me. Imagination and creativity are usually words that we reserve for things like children, artists, creatives. It's not really a term or a concept or a skill set that business people think about. And that's a mistake. In the world we live in right now, many of us are very scared about AI and its ability to take our jobs. The things that we hold at highest value are things like logic, reasoning, analysis, semantics, language, all things that AI can do pretty well. The flip side of something that humans can do is this ability to imagine something that hasn't yet been created. So while AI can remix all of the existing knowledge out there, and maybe even bring it to you in a slightly different way, depending on how you prompt it, it can't do what the human brain can, which is really create a vision and imagine a future world that does not yet exist. So, now I introduce myself. I'm Dr. Emily Clements. I'm a neuroscientist. I've researched the brain for over 10 years, and for 5 years, I researched a specific group of people, entrepreneurs. In particular, I looked at disruptive entrepreneurs. So these are people who have started a business or maybe a charity, an NGO. They're obsessed with solving problems. And the key factor that makes it disruptive is they're solving a very specific problem with a unique idea that disrupts the market. And what I became interested in is what is different about these people. In particular, what might be different about their brain. So, I put entrepreneurs in the MRI scanner. And this is a real participant that I had, who luckily filmed it, so I have this footage. Who's been in an MRI scanner? Oh, we have a few. Can you tell us what the experience is like?
I don't mind them, but I like techno, so for me it's like a very narrow talent.
Yeah. Pretty claustrophobic. They're really loud, noisy machines. But they give us the ability to look inside the human body. We can look inside organs. Particularly for me, we can look inside the brain. And while what I showed on the screen is structural MRI, so this is what you get if you go to the doctor and they get a scan of your brain, something I used is functional MRI. So I'm not looking at structural differences, I'm looking at the actual activity and functioning of the brain. And we measure this by blood flow changes. So I can get someone to do a particular task or think in a certain way. And when they do that, I can measure how blood flow changes to different regions in their brain. To talk about the task that I gave, I'm now going to give you the opportunity to have a go at it. So I'm going to put 2 words on the screen. This is an association task, so it's to promote some kind of creativity in your brain. And I'd like you to come up with a link between them. It can be anything you want, there's no rules. The more unique, the better. Does anyone have a link?
Yeah.
Yeah?
The chair is made by grapefruit trees.
So the chair is made by grapefruit trees. That's cool. I haven't heard that one before. Nice. Anyone else?
I just said you could put the grapefruit on the chair.
The grapefruit on the chair? You could, yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of, well, you could sit on a chair and eat a grapefruit. You could. Anything else? Yeah?
The first thing that came to my mind is that you could use the citrus from the grapefruit to clean the chair.
Ooh, that's a first as well. That's really good. And we had another one here.
I spilled my grapefruit juice on the chair and then forgot and sat on it and it was sticky.
Did that actually happen? No.
I mean,
I was like, imagine that happened this morning. Nice. So what we're doing here is, in particular, these 2 words, they're words that you don't often see together. So they kind of promote a little bit more creativity in your brain. And we compare this to control tasks where we give people words like sheep and farm. What's the link? So obvious, right? Your brain doesn't even have to do any work to get there. Whereas when we give harder word pairs like this, your brain has to do a lot more work to create that association. And the harder it works sometimes, the more kind of remote those associations can be, the further away from each other. And what we find in most people is that when you give this type of task in an MRI scanner, you find that there is a lot more activity in the frontal regions. So people are using a lot more cognitive control. They're trying a lot harder to come up with a link. I found the opposite in entrepreneurs. So these are the findings. So this is, we kind of take an average of all the scans, and then this is showing the area of the brain that I found to be different in entrepreneurs. So this area is the middle prefrontal gyrus. And as I said, in most people, we find that areas like this are higher when they're being creative. But in entrepreneurs, the activity in this area was lower. I know you're all looking at me like, so what does that mean? So was I when I first looked at the brain scans. Essentially what this means is that they are using less effort, less cognitive control when they are given these creative tasks, which suggests that it's a little bit easier for them. Now this links quite well to something that's called the neural efficiency hypothesis. And the key's in the name there, efficiency. And this is kind of how we learn any skill. So the more we do something, the more specialized those networks in our brain become, and the less activity it requires. It's easier. The second thing about this region, which is quite interesting, is it usually inhibits our long-term memory. So when we're trying to solve a problem, we can stay focused on that problem and not be distracted by that internal dialogue that goes on in our head, reminding us of this thing that happened last week and yesterday and last month. Because this is lower in entrepreneurs, it suggests that perhaps when they are going through this creative problem solving, they are in fact drawing on their self-referential thoughts and their own experience more. So, to ground, this has been a lot of brain science. So to ground this in a real life example, I want to introduce you to one of the entrepreneurs that I had in my study. And she's I've met a lot of inspiring entrepreneurs, but she is one of the most inspiring entrepreneurs because of her story. Andrea, when she was 17, suffered her own challenges. So she found out that she was infertile and she had no uterus. She used this challenge to go on to become a nurse at King's College London, which is also where I did my PhD. And she then became a fertility nurse, then later developed a business that solves a problem in fertility. In 2020, when COVID hit, and the whole world was scrambling to create, and so many businesses were scrambling to create at-home testing kits for COVID, she used this opportunity to see a link between these problems that she's faced, the problems that she still saw as a fertility nurse, with the fact that it's inaccessible to a lot of people, fertility testing, that people struggle. It takes on average 3 years for people to receive a diagnosis of why they're having fertility problems. And she also saw these at-home testing kits that were being administered for COVID. And so her and her husband thought, why don't we create at-home fertility testing kits? And she created Enhanced Fertility. Now, she not only created this association between a problem that she saw and something she saw as a business model that was working for COVID testing, but the thing that makes Andrea's business a disruptive innovation and makes her a disruptive entrepreneur is not just this association that she made, but it's her story and how she brings that into the business every day. So even now with their fertility testing kits, they don't just provide medical diagnosis, they look at diet, they look at lifestyle, and they provide psychological support for people because they know what a difficult journey this can be. And that's the thing that I really want to hammer home today, that you can use your problems as fuel to create something in your business that is meaningful and lands with people. That is something that only a human can do. That is your human advantage. You don't need to be worried about AI. You can use it to create more efficient workflows, but you have something as a human that it does not. Now, let's not skip ahead. Now, the next question that we could ask is, so this ability that someone like Andrea has to use her own problems to create disruptive innovation, is this something that some people are just wired to be able to do? What do people think?
I think that you can be taught.
You think you can be taught? Yeah. Is there anyone who's on the other side? Nice, good. I don't need to convince you otherwise. So some people might think that this type of thinking, this type of disruptive innovation is really wired in people. But my research suggests a slightly more interesting story. So, as well as my MRI study, I also ran an online study. And in this, I looked at disruptive thinking, so competency and skill set. It relates to things like having creative ideas, being able to implement them, bring other people along on the journey, and importantly, have a vision of the future and how you want it to change. Now, I found that expert entrepreneurs sit right at the top. So they have the highest disruptive thinking skills. This is followed by novice entrepreneurs, so those with less experience are less versed in this skill. Followed by non-entrepreneurs, so people who haven't yet started a business. So it's not that complicated, it's pretty simple. The more experience you have, the better you become at thinking in a disruptive way. And now, interestingly, past literature links things like disruptive thinking to our social and power structures. So if you are someone that considers yourself in a company, in an organization, bottom of the food chain, you're likely to report that you're not very good at disruptive thinking. If you're the CEO, if you're a freelancer, if you're in the leadership team, you're likely to report that you're very good at disruptive thinking. Because essentially the environment that we're in either gives us permission to and allows us to, or doesn't ask that from us and doesn't allow us to. So this points a lot to the fact that it's the environment rather than the person that really enables disruptive thinking. The next finding that I want to show you is a slightly different personality profile that I found in entrepreneurs in my online study. There's a few different findings, but the one that I want to talk about is openness. So openness is one of the big 5 personality traits, and it relates to, no surprise, your openness to new experiences, your curiosity, your want to go out there and explore new things, go to new events, talk to new people, learn a new skill. Interestingly, openness also correlates with creativity. So the more open and curious we are, the more creative we are. And both openness and creativity are very high when we are young. And this makes sense. We go out there, we explore the world, we're open, we're curious. You could just look at a child and see that in them. Now, openness consistently declines with age. So it's something that the older we get, the more expert we become, the more closed off we become to new ideas and new opportunities. And this makes sense. We can't spend all our time being open and curious and learning everything. At some point we say, no, I'm the expert here, I know this. But it does create a slightly more closed off mindset, apart from in entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs have the ability, despite growing older, to stay open. How they do this is the final thing that I want to talk about in my findings. And this relates to uncertainty. So it's a sure fact that if you are doing something creative, if you are starting a business, if you are doing something new and unique, that there's not a lot of certainty in the outcome. You don't know if it's going to be successful. You don't know how people are going to respond, if they're going to like your idea. When you start to pivot the business in a new direction, do you know if that's the right thing to do? No. One of the most predictable things about the future is that it isn't predictable. Entrepreneurs have an ability to tolerate uncertainty. Yeah, really well. And I'm sure you guys do. But most of this is an emotional tolerance of uncertainty. It's that ability to sit with the discomfort. It's not that the discomfort isn't there. And that is something you only gain through stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing it. So that is, again, based on experience, not necessarily just the person. So what does this mean for you? What this means, as I've touched upon, is firstly, every single person in this room has the ability to think disruptively. You did as children. How many people imagined whole worlds with their friends and play pretend and made up scenarios? I kind of think a little bit as entrepreneurship as grown-up kids, just like imagining new scenarios, like, hey, let's go out and do that. We all have this ability. And touching back to the thing that it's your personal story and who you are as a human and the things that you've been through that really drives that advantage, you have something that AI doesn't. So you need to use your story in what you are doing. So your challenge, and after this we'll move into a workshop portion, is to allow yourself to imagine a little bit more, to spark that creativity, to use your past experiences and your stories in your vision of the future and where you want it to go. Because your competitive advantage is your brain. You just have to learn how to use it in the right way. Thank you.